Good morning, people. I actually made a video about what we're about to talk about uh, before the South Carolina primary, but it's even more important to discuss it now. Two things, and my main thing is, of course, I make these videos about Ron Paul, and I make them really, I'm just making them for the public in general because the uneducation process, I guess I could say, for most of you guys is frightening at times. Um, the problem is that we all get our we all get our information from big news, and you can't do that because you have to understand. And I explained this briefly in my last video. How conventions work and how delegates work, and you have to realize as a people you are not electing your next candidate for presidency, Republican Party. You're actually voting for delegates and how many delegates to send. And then your delegates make the thing. Uh, so Ron Paul has a good strategy. The news media is ignoring him, especially after his. I don't know what the final was in South Carolina. I know he was in fourth. I don't know if he pulled out a third or not. I'd be lying if I gave you that fact as definite. Um, but there's something I want all of you to pay attention to that are interested in it. I know all of you aren't, and that's fine. But those of you that are interested in it, go to CNN. Yes, CNN. I very rarely do this because I hate CNN. I'm not fond of Fox either, before you think I'm one of them crazies. But CNN has a Republican delegate tracker. This is very important because if you look at this delegate tracker, it's nowhere near close to what the media would have you believe. It's still a very tight race between the three of them. For instance, as of this morning, Gingrich has 25 delegate votes. Mitt Romney has 14. And Ron Paul has 10, and Santorum only has 8. So your last place person at this point is actually Santorum. Even though they're trying to make it like he's about to make this big rise, I don't see it happening. I see Santorum dropping out. Ron Paul is not going to drop out. He's already made that very clear. He's going all the way to the convention floor. And it is smart for this reason alone. If the race, well, you have to realize Republicans change the way they nominate for president. This year is a complete set of new rules. It doesn't work like it used to. It used to be winner take all. In other words, if Romney won, or Romney won New Hampshire, he would get all of their votes. That is not the case anymore. The Republican Party has a few things. The main one being they're punishing states that are having their primaries before April, and there's a good reason for that. When you start an election this early, like we're doing, you have a few states, and then all of a sudden you have your front runner already, and then most people in the rest of the country don't vote because it's already been decided, or you think you have. The media will let you think it's already been decided. So, most states that hold their primaries before April are not getting full credit. In other words, it's not winner take all. Their delegates have to be divided up between the candidates. This is very similar. It works the same way for your president. Most people at least are aware that when you vote for president, you're just voting for delegates. You're actually not voting for the president, which is how you can have a president win without actually winning the popular vote. It's just how our system works. That's fucked up, and I'll agree with you. But this is how we're working it this year. Same way for Republicans. This is what gives Ron Paul his greatest shot. Ron Paul's in second. Ron Paul's got 10 delegates to Mitt Romney's 14. And you think that's only a 4-delegate gap. But yet you'd have the news media believe it's just, no way. The problem is that it works very much like the president. What is like I said, I'm not a pundit, so I'm not going to give you exact answers, but it's, you have to have 200-something delegates in the Electoral College to, maybe it's 100-something, but I think it's 2-something, is the magic number, and that person wins the presidency, because at that point he has the majority of the delegates, and so be it. Well, the Republican Party is working quite the same way this year. So I don't remember the exact magic number. It's 1100 something. I don't remember if it's 1130 something, 1150 something. In order to get the nomination for a candidate for presidency this year, a person will have to do that. The way the Republicans have structured the rules this year, it is extremely possible that's not going to happen. Some political people will tell you that it'll never happen. Some tell you it's close to happening. We'll see. It makes it a lot more easier to have a brokered convention, because if these three guys really stay to the end of this campaign, you see normally somebody drops out, makes a deal with the Republican leadership to drop out, and so be it, and to let the guy, because the party, and both work this way, even Democrats, you want to unify behind one person. You don't want the party splintered. um, you know the problem with Paul in this situation is, if you know anything about his record, he's not going to do that. He's not going to make a deal to get out of the race. He doesn't do that. He's never done that. Doesn't take lobby money. He gives most of his congressional pay back. He doesn't, that's just not him. And they know that, which is why it worries them, which is why he's downplayed so much in the media, because it bothers the people that are in charge. Because you possibly have a scenario. Hell, until South Carolina, Mitt Romney was the man and nobody was going to beat him. And then at that point, Ron Paul was only one delegate behind him. So now all of a sudden we go to South Carolina, and now Gingrich is ahead of everybody. So, these two guys are going to continue to fight. I think Rick Santorum is going to get out of the race eventually. He just won't have the money to go. Key important things to note here. Gingrich is not on the ballot in a lot of states coming up. He chose not to spend his money there, and that's okay, but you have to realize he'll receive no delegates in that state. I believe West Virginia is the closest one coming up. There's only two people on the ballot in West Virginia, and that is Romney and Paul. So you have a Romney-Paul choice. So even if Romney wins that state, Ron Paul is going to probably garner a lot larger vote than he has thus far and pick up a lot of delegates, and Romney will probably pick up the majority. But then I don't know, something wacky could happen and Paul could get the majority. Anyway, that's going to put those two guys way closer to Newt on delegates, and then it's an even closer race than it is now. After April, of course, is when it really starts to happen, and that's when your states start to become winner take all. But the problem is, in these early states that are all having their primaries, none of these guys are getting winner take all. So it makes a scenario that going into the convention, you may have somebody who doesn't get it. And then you also have to look at people like Rick Santorum and Perry and people that did have delegates that dropped out of the race. Okay, these people dropped out of the race, so now those delegates, depending on what state you're in, are up for grabs. They are free to vote for whomever when they get to the convention floor. This is where it becomes very sketchy, because they don't have to vote. The person that delegate was assigned to is no longer in the race. So that's a key thing. And I think Paul's been really smart on this, sneaking his way into the convention. So you're going to come to the big winner-take-all states. Now, Ron Paul's spending a lot of money in Montana, a lot of money in Nevada, because he has the chance to pick up some huge delegates there. A lot of people are not campaigning there yet. I'm pretty sure Gingrich is on the ballot in all those states, but I could be wrong. You'll have to look that up. But there are quite a few states, once we get westward, that Gingrich has not even been put on the ballot yet. And neither has Santorum. So you only have Paul and Romney. So you have to realize, when you get to these states, those delegates are going to be, even if it's winner take all, then these other guys are eventually going to have to drop out, and their delegates are going to have to go somewhere. So you're going to come to the Republican convention, to the floor, with no person having a majority in delegates, no person having that magic number. And at that point, the delegates will decide who it is. I will not lie. It will probably be Romney. Some miracle, maybe Gingrich. Or at that point, it's really a wild card, because the delegates could, in fact, vote for Gingrich to be their candidate at the convention floor, even if he drops out of the race. Yes, this is possible, and it would be very legal by the Republican rules. If the delegates are unhappy as a whole and no one's gotten a full 1,100, whatever the number is, at that point, depending on what state you're in, they're freed up to vote for whoever. And then you have the convention floor that will go through numerous rounds of votes till somebody gets a majority, even if it's somebody who's not running. That's very doubtful to happen. I imagine Romney will probably get it. If by some miracle Gingrich maintains this steam, maybe him. I think that's a horrible idea. I hate Newt Gingrich. I think most people don't like him. I will not I will not downplay his intelligence. He is a very smart man, and he does have he does know how to work the system. He's very intelligent. Um, and I'm not a big person on morals. You know, you guys know that. I don't believe it should have anything to do with somebody's public office. I've never been that way. I don't care who's fucking who. It's stupid. But in this case, it does take a little bit more of an important role because Gingrich has put himself on running on a political platform of family values. So once you do that, if you make it such a big deal as family values is part of your plan, then yes, your moral fiber is going to count for something because that's what you're running on. And this guy is just slimy. He's a hypocrite. Everybody knows his personal life business. You know, I know his wife was interviewed the other night. And it's supposed to be some big, great shocker. It's not. You know, it was all known about before. And he is. He's slimy, and I don't like that. You know, if he was not running on a family values platform at all, and he wasn't telling gay people that they're disgusting and don't have the right to get married, I wouldn't care at all. I could care less how many wives he has. But he has forced himself onto that level of being a very family valued campaign. Bad move. You shouldn't do that if you can't live up to it, because then you do at that point have to consider the moral fiber of the man that wants to run for president. If you're going to sit there and run on those beliefs but not practice them, you're very hypocritical. There's no point in even considering you. I don't think he'll make it to the nomination. He might. I think he'll run out of money before then. Ron Paul is just amazing at raising money lately. No, he doesn't have as much money as the other ones have, but he has such a strong base, especially military. I mean, he raises more money from active duty military than any candidate. No one raises more money from the military than Ron Paul because he doesn't believe in useless wars. And I think our soldiers are tired of that, and they're probably reflecting that with their, with their money. But so I think Ron Paul will be fine. I think he will take it to the convention floor. I've always told you guys my point in voting for Ron Paul is not this great thing that he's going to become president. I get chastised a lot. Believe me, my family is very conservative. And they're not too happy with who I'm choosing to back and kind of put my name out there for. It bothers them, and I don't really care. But, he's my vote for him is a totally different way. I'd like to see him fight on the convention floor, because the problem is that if somebody consistently gains 30% of the vote, which he hasn't this last time, but let's just say he averages 20% by the time he gets to the convention floor. You as Republican leaders now have to sit back and look and say, okay, first of all, no one got enough to clinch our nomination, and Ron Paul is pulling a good 20% of our electorate away. An electorate that will not vote for Romney, an electorate that, is not happy with the candidates we feel are best. So at that point, the party has to make concessions to start letting that libertarian point of view move into the Republican Party. That's what this is all about, guys, not necessarily him winning. I know a lot of you diehard Paul fans want that, and hey, I'd be happy with it. But in reality, I don't think it's happened. But in reality, this is what does happen. He goes to the convention floor, and they have to give him the keynote speech. They have to at that point, because he's come in second place, maybe third. So his views can no longer be dismissed by the Republican Party and laughed at, by far-right Republicans, because Republicans know that after this election, if 30% of their delegate, 30% of their people don't support their nominee, then they have to somehow incorporate that 30% to get behind their candidate. And I think you will, not this year, not maybe 20 years from now, slowly you will see the Republican Party start to embrace these ideas because they simply will not exist as a party much longer if they don't. They're no longer relevant. This big spending is no longer relevant. I think they're going to have to get back to their roots of less spending, cutting government. This Republicans are in bed with this huge defense spending. They're going to have to stop. I'm not now. Military spending is fine. Defense spending is different. We talked about that in the last video. So Paul's ideas will definitely be injected to the mainstream of the political process in the Republican Party. And so that maybe a few years from now we'll get a candidate that's more like him. I mean, you're not going to find anybody as good as Paul, in my opinion, simply because what he's telling you he has practiced. And I don't think any congressman, senator, governor can give you that right now. I mean, you can look at Ron Paul's record, and he votes his convictions. If he believes it's unconstitutional, he's not going to vote for it, period. Whether it's put up by a Republican or a Democrat. It's how he's always done things. And I just don't think people do that nowadays because the way Washington works, if you know anything about politics, is, hey, I need you on this vote, and I'll give your district this much money, or I'll move this business to your district if you vote for us on that. And I think that's the majority of the way most politicians do things in Washington. And then, hey, if that's what you got to do to get things done, doesn't mean I'm happy about it, but that's the game. Ron Paul doesn't play that game. Every politician you ask could tell you that. He's not going to sell his vote. He never has. So I think it's going to be hard to find that in true existence for another good 10, 20, 30 years because your newer politicians will have to come up with that conviction before that happens. But I think the ideas will be planted in the party, and I think the convention floor would be a nice place to be. I personally am going to be a delegate this year. Well, I'm going to try. I'm going to do what I have to do in my state to be one. And I will, as I'm supposed to as a delegate, vote for whoever wins Texas. However, if I get to the convention floor and there is no majority winner, I've got all the rules. I've read everything about Texas. I'm not going to get into depth with it because not all of you are from Texas. But I would have to vote for the majority that won my state the first round. And if there's still no winner, I believe it's the second round. There's a little rule I can start voting for another candidate in third round and so on. So I won't have to vote if nobody gets a thing. I won't have to vote the way my district did once there's no clear-cut winner. If there's a clear-cut winner, it's useless. I'm getting kind of lengthy, and I really just wanted this to be a short educational lesson for some of you. I love you guys, so that's how this works. I'm saying this because I know a lot of you, and Paul has this problem. A lot of you say, I really like the guy, Jeff, and I love what he stands for, but, I mean, he's never going to win. Okay, you cannot hold that attitude if you know how the system works. Now, I've never done this in the past for Paul because the Republican Party used to not work this way. This is not how we used to do primaries. This has changed. This is what is so important. And if you watch a lot of Ron Paul videos, you're going to hear a lot of talk about delegate and become a delegate and go to the convention because the Republican Party has changed their rules. And it leaves a big hole for somebody to take over. If Romney or Gingrich does not reach the 1,100-something delegates they need to clinch the nomination. It leads for some pretty, if anything, an interesting year in politics. So don't give up. Ron Paul's very right. If you ever read his stuff, he tells you don't give up. He tells you that elections is just a numbers game. He puts that in everything he writes, which they are. They're a numbers game, but a numbers game that's easily played now that gives more people a fair shot since Republicans have changed their rules because there's nobody taking winner take all till later in this election. And by then you have more people dropping out, et cetera, et cetera. Or even if people stay in, then you really have a problem because these guys can all go to the convention floor. But that's all I wanted to talk to you guys today about was delegates and how this voting thing you see. And if you follow the media, you're getting a very unclear picture. So I do give kudos to CNN because CNN does have a delegate tracker. I check it after every election because votes are being divvied up. Like they never used to do in the Republican Party. So it's very interesting to see because you will not hear the media tell you that Ron Paul's in third place. You will hear the media talk about Romney and Gingrich, which is fair because they are the two. But you're not going to hear the fact that Ron Paul's only 4 delegates behind. So the story should be Gingrich surging, Romney and Paul fighting for delegates. You're not going to hear that. And you'll probably still hear some outlandish claim that Rick Santorum has a chance. He's way behind in the delegates. He doesn't really. Excuse me, I have a cold. He's way behind. I don't even think he should be mentioned at this point. But Florida's coming up next. Do not quote me on this, but I believe the Republican Party has made a deal with Florida to let them be winner take all. I could be very wrong on that because I didn't look it up. This is how I make videos. They're just on the fly, things I want to tell you. Florida's a little funny because they were penalized last year. So I read somewhere that they don't want to penalize them again this year. So I'm not real sure how their vote works. I can tell you that Ron Paul will do very poorly in Florida. He's expecting that. He's barely campaigned there. He doesn't have much money there. I think he's just opened a few campaign offices there. He's just not interested in Florida. He's interested in West Virginia. He's interested in the western states because by then there'll be less people for him to go against. It'll be easier for him to pick up delegates. So he knows what he's doing. He's not an ignorant man. He's very smart. He's not so much worried about Florida. So you will see probably some people will make some huge gains on him in a delegate count in Florida, but I think that's going to very much slow, especially West Virginia, when you get to Nevada, when you get to places like that. That's going to very much slow where he can sort of catch up in a delegate count. So, like I said, please, if you really do care about the election, because I know some people don't, and that's fine, but if you do care and you do back Ron Paul, or really whoever you back, check out that CNN delegate counter because that's going to give you a true picture of who's winning. Right now, I can admit that Gingrich is way far ahead of most people in delegates thanks to South Carolina. He won't fare as well. Florida, although it's a conservative state, there's a lot of snowbirds in Florida, which, that's older or elderly that have moved from the north down to Florida. For and you get older, you don't want to stay in that cold and shit. So, although they still vote conservative, it's very liberal leaning. So, I don't know if Gingrich can pick up as much in Florida as he did in South Carolina. But, like I said, I'm not an expert. I don't know. I haven't even really looked at polls in Florida because I know that the person I'm voting for is largely skipping Florida. He's largely going to let them have that. And let them fight against it because and again, that's smart because now you have these 3 guys, Santorum and Romney and Gingrich are going to fight and spend huge amounts of money in Florida to try to win that state. Then when they move on, whoever loses in Florida is not going to have the funds to continue to make that big a push again. Some of them, and I mean Santorum by that. I don't really know how Newt's looking money-wise. So Paul's smart. He's spending his money in other places, and he's pretty much already conceded not to even try to get the vote in Florida. So I'm just saying, don't think that it's over just because the media is telling you it's over. It's very important to realize the way the Republican convention works this year, and that was my little part of educating you guys. Y'all have a great one.